Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. Today we're going to do a Should You poll for Vaan FR. So this is the next banner coming to Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. So what we are getting on this banner is we're getting Vaan with a rework with his FR. He already had his BT and everything else released. So there's going to be some players out there that pretty much, like me, have Vaan fully kitted. You just need to pull the FR and you're good to go. And Vaan even without FR is going to be good. But his FR is pretty darn good, like, for himself. We'll talk about that. And then we've got Dark Knight Cecil, and then we've got Edge. Edge and Dark Knight Cecil, they're already C90, so basically they're just getting their force enhancements, right? So I'll talk about each of the characters, and then obviously Minwu BT will still be hanging around as well, if you're still going for that, right? So I would say Dark Knight Cecil is probably the weakest character on the banner. Dark Knight Cecil is a kind of a launch-based character, damage dealer, has a lot of effects that like subtract from his own health to do more damage. He's a dark damage dealer. He's just an okay character. He's not like meta defining. I think there's better launch characters out there. I personally am not a fan of characters that take their own health, but it could work really well in like a Renoa team comp, like during Renoa FR when you want to be low on health. That's the one plus I'll give him, is he does work well with a Renoa force time. But I don't think Dark Knight Cecil is anything anybody needs to be clamoring about or going crazy for, right? Edge, on the other hand, is an excellent character. Edge has been one of my MVPs for a while. He's a very valuable character, I would say, for players to have in their box. Just because his gimmick is that he essentially has 100% evasion, and he enables the party to have 100% evasion. So he's helped me through some of the most difficult quests in the game. He helps you against very aggressive bosses, provided they can be dodged. I think the one downfall of Edge is becoming more and more common, where enemies have attacks that can't be dodged. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. But Edge is a ridiculously good dodge counter tank. Crazy. And Edge, you know, he's a character you can run in tank comps, but you have to be careful because you don't want to run him with tanks that have to get hit. Because if they have to get hit, they won't actually trigger, right? But if you run him with other dodge evade counters, so like, if you run him in a party with somebody like, say, Shadow, or Cater, or 8, any of these characters that have dodge counters, like, those team comps can be kind of crazy. Now, those other dodge counter characters already have their own ways of dodging, but I would say, like, he really makes a character like Shadow look good, because Shadow, he's probably, like, one of the more less consistent dodge counter characters, because he doesn't really get 100% that much. I think he gets it through his AA, and that's it. And Edge's thing is when, or not Edge, but Shadow's thing is when he dodges, he like steals a bunch of turns, which is kind of crazy, right? So I think there's a lot of potential for Edge. I do think he's a ridiculously good character. He's a very good low investment character. He's an LD only character. You don't have to force charge, you know, put a bunch of force stones into him or anything. He's just a good character. So I would say Edge is pretty fantastic. Now, when talking about Vaan, for those of you unfamiliar with Vaan, Vaan is primarily a single target, very heavy hitting magic damage dealer. And he does have like a splash in his attacks, but his brave hits are for the most part just single target. He does have AoE, I think, on his LD, but most of his kit is a lot of single target stuff, right? And he does a ton of brave hits. With his rework, he gets more brave hits, more damage. He has abilities that kind of level up, and those abilities kind of get going even a step quicker than they used to do. So his damage is very, very good, right? His BT effect gimmick is that he gives you basically like 20% brave retain. So like every time you dump, you're left with at least 20% of your brave. So it works really well with characters that do a ton of brave hits. And it's kind of funny because his force partner is Machina, who is one of those characters that does a ton of brave hits, a ton of HP dumps, which Vaan's BT effect works really well with those types of characters, these brave retained type deal, because then you're starting at a higher floor for your brave. Every time you're dumping all this HP damage, it's just going to make your HP damage a lot better, right? Now, in terms of Vaan's force effect, his force effect is actually quite good for himself, right? But it is a pretty flexible one that works with the rest of the party, right? So, one of his effects is if you, basically if you do an attack where you don't consume a skill use, right? And so basically what Vaan does is his LD, what it always did for him is it gave him a bunch of free turns where he wouldn't use skill uses, right? So what his FR does is it does that to the party, where the party won't be using up their skill uses. So this can be kind of abusable with characters that maybe have powerful abilities that have low skill uses. Now, it does say that there are some exceptions. I don't know exactly what those exceptions are, but some skill uses will have exception to this. But for the most part, skills will get extra skill uses. I'm going to assume the ones that have exception to this are like really powerful one-turn HP plus attacks or something like that. But we'll learn more about that as we get into it, right? So if you just use a skill that doesn't consume an ability, which he himself will have and he'll give to the party, it's 40%, but when he does it, it's 60. So just off that one condition, he's getting 60%. And then basically, if your turn passes and you have 20% of your Brave, which that's what his gimmick is BT is going to make it so that you retain 20% of your Brave. You can retain Brave with other characters' effects too. It doesn't have to be with Vaan's BT. But there's a lot of like Brave retain, Brave gain type shenanigans you can do with this. You're going to get another 20% from that. So basically, on Vaan's turns, he's getting 80% per turn, and other characters will usually get 60. So it's a very consistent, easy to use force time, right? So there's a lot of temptation here with Vaan. Now here's what I'm going to say for this banner. I don't think this banner is a must summon, but I also don't think it's an instant skip. I think it's really going to depend on where you're at as a player and where you're at with your box, right? So, for example, a player like me, if you're a veteran player, like you might already have these characters all built. And so like if all you need is Vaan's force, you could probably safely skip this because there's other force times you can use and Vaan is still quite powerful, right? The other thing is it depends on your resources. Now, like let's say, and it depends on what you have, right? So one thing I'll say is this. The two dominant DPS characters in the game are Tifa and Rinoa, right? The way I think of Vaan is basically the same role as Tifa. Very powerful single target DPS character, which is what Tifa is. The one thing is that Vaan is magic damage and Tifa is physical damage. Vaan's one downfall is he carries a bunch of elements and it's easier for him to get locked out. Now, as you've seen in one of my other previous videos, sometimes lockout doesn't matter. Vaan, even when he's hitting ones, is still going to be Brave gaining. He's still going to have his 20% Brave retention. Like, he'll still do good damage. He just won't be able to Brave shave, right? And depending on what attacks, like I said, different attacks carry different elements. Some attacks maybe won't be locked out, some maybe will be. But I think Vaan is good enough that he'll get around elemental lockout if you really want to make him work. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now what I'm going to say is this. If you have Tifa or Rinoa, this is pretty easy to skip. Like this is a very safe skip. I would say if you have Tifa or Rinoa and you're content with that. Now if you say just started, or you miss Tifa and Rinoa and you don't have like that #1 DPS, like Vaan can be that. Vaan's going to output a lot of damage. I definitely will get a showcase in on him. My plan is I do want to max his FR because I really like Vaan. And part of the factor for me too is when I've already fully invested a character, as you can see my Vaan is green-blue. If I've already put that much investment into him, I kind of want his full kit and to keep him full invested. So that's another thing too that can play into if you want to do it or not. Vaan is a very high invest character. There's a lot to consider. Do you want the blue armor? Do you want the green BT? Do you want to max out the FR? There's a lot of pieces to his kit. Now, Vaan's BT isn't like the most crazy important thing, but it does really impact his force time because you need that 20% Brave retention for the party if you really want it to work better. But I wouldn't say you necessarily have to be green, but it's going to work better if you are green. But I think Vaan can get away without a green BT if you want him to. I think if you just want a DPS that you can use with other force times, though, you don't necessarily need his force. Vaan's going to put out a lot of damage. The other thing to consider is how important is Edge to you, right? I would say if you already have Edge maxed out, it makes the banner more skippable. If you don't have Edge and you're lacking tank-type characters, or you like the idea that you want to be able to evade in these hard fights for the party, Edge is a very good pickup. I do really, really like Edge. I'm giving him quite the glowing review. Dark Knight Cecil, he's a little bit of a throwaway for me, but he's there. A newer player, maybe he's useful to you. So it's kind of a tough one, you guys. It's like a 50-50. Once again, if you want to maybe lay out your situation in the comments, let me know. But here's what I would say. If you just want a basic statement from me, I would say if you're lacking a DPS and or a tank character, this is a very good banner to summon on. if you have these characters or you have Tifa Rinoa, I would say it's a fairly safe skip. So that's, I guess, is the most generic statement I can make in terms of should you pull. So anyways, guys, let me know if this guide helps. Let me know in the comments if you want more advice or join my Discord. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you all on the next one.